You are listening to the Brain Profits Podcast. We bring awareness to the reality that, in large, people allow their brains to control them, which is causing difficulty at school, at work, and in life.
Success in life and business starts in the brain. Therefore, we want to explore the challenges that exist for people and organizations so that they are in control of their brains and not the other way around.
Listen in, be inspired, and take back control of your brain, and you'll create optimal results in your life, organization, and community.
Ready to start the show? We are, so let's go. Today we have an artist special guest, continuing our conversation with Mr. Chris McAdoo. Welcome back. Let's get going. So you were saying.
And so when you say, hey guys, what do you think of this idea? Whatever, if it's a pitch, if it's whatever, right? Hey, read my novel. Hey, check out my screenplay or whatever. Are you looking for affirmation or are you looking for critical feedback? Those are very different things. Like my dad, I've been lucky that my father is a supporter of mine in terms of when I was young. I've started drawing and creating when I'm 4 years old, right?
So you're telling me that he was the one who's been buying up all your work? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yeah. It's all just back at the house. They just put it in the barn. But no, we grew up on a big horse farm. He was an accountant, numbers guy, all this kind of stuff. I could bring him one of the things that I did like in 7th grade and be like, hey, this is what I'm working on now. He'd be like, that's great. Like he is full of affirmation. That's exactly what I need from him. But my mother is an artist. She's a photographer. And I could bring her, so she even looks at the stuff that I do now, and she will give me great critical feedback. My wife, my partner, like all I have to do if I'm doubting something, if I'm in the studio or if I'm writing something or whatever, is I just have to say, hey, do you want to take a look at this? And within like 2 seconds, she doesn't even have to say anything. Like I can tell from her posture. I'm like, okay, back to the it's like back to the drawing board. But that's but at the same time, I know that when she comes in and she says, wow, that's coming along really well, that she means it. So moving with intention towards something, I think is incredible. Yeah.
I'm also going to add, if you don't have, listeners, if you don't have people around you that can like critically like dive into your stuff, your ideas or whatever you're trying to do in your support system that can help challenge you to really grow in a particular way, you should, find out or figure out how to get some, number one, and then use them because that helps a lot. It's helped me going through a process where there are people from a business standpoint challenge the idea that I started off with. And most of the time it's been like, hey, if you thought about it this way and you take something and you could make more money with it just by taking on the new thought and challenge that somebody else brought up. And it's okay if it's not your idea. Most great ideas aren't our ideas. Even for those who don't know the Albert Einstein atomic bomb story, even like how to get that bomb to fly through the air to land somewhere else, that wasn't Einstein's idea. That was somebody else's.
No, I love, so part of my development as a creative person was also one of the companies I built was a brand, like a design and brand strategy company. And then I was also fortunate to work as a creative director at a large advertising agency. And so your own output begins to matter less than the team's output. So there was like, I would be stoked in terms of, particularly a junior designer that, I'll crush a bad idea very quickly so we can get on to the good ones. Yeah. But when you have particularly a junior designer that, 1 month is talking to a client and they're tepid and they step back, and then you can talk to them and be like, hey, here's some ways that you can engage. And then the next time you see them in that situation and they're balling, they're awesome. And you're like, oh man, that is fun. So you get to be part of that process of your own growth as well as somebody else, right? You take that, you're working with intention to give that constructive feedback. Because I mean, I don't know about y'all too, but if look, if I stand in one place too long, or if I'm not challenged, like how bored? Yeah, Philippe, you were talking earlier about like your brain literally getting bored, right? And so like what, so I love that. I love that constant challenge. I love being, somebody else brings a great idea to the table. I'm not scared of it. Like, I like it. I'm like, ooh, that's good. That's better. If I bring an idea to the table that somebody then kicks back and it's 20% better or 100% better or totally different, then it energizes me, because it means, one, oh, cool, that's a person that is willing to take ownership, right? Like of this now. So now I've got brain space again. Ooh, cool. I get to think about this other thing.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, and I think something that's really important that you guys are talking about, and this is what I think is really the meaning of life, is that it's about evolution. And not evolution of the species, but evolution of the individual. Right? And I see so many people from a neurological perspective that have not evolved. Right? They're doing the same job at 60 years old that they were doing at 23 years old. Right? And as a result of that, they're not making new neurons in their brains. They're not creating new connections between neurons in their brain. And in fact, they're probably losing neurons because they're not learning anything new. Right? And so I think that evolution is so important for us individually. It's important for our brain health. It's important for us to just really enjoy and maximize our life.
Oh, no, you're 100% right. We know that by people having lower cognitive function skills from a community standpoint, that it causes issues across the board, not just social issues, but also health issues as well. And so it's important for people to take care of themselves. And it's really weird. There's a study going on right now by a hospital group out of Dallas. It's a 10-year study. They're in year 2 of a 10-year study, which is wild when I think about how long it actually takes us to go like, oh, we should do this. Where they're looking at like, okay, what do we need to do? Will people really engage and do the thing that it takes to help their brains out? And they're saying, hey, like we'd like people to do 10 minutes a day, right? Of like something that does something for your brain, but at least 10 minutes a week. But then they'll say things, right? That's what the study's gonna look at. Okay, can we get people to kind of buy in to do things for themselves? We're in year 2, so I don't know yet. I suspect that people are not going to do what they are supposed to do. That's what I suspect. But I also got to say too, in this particular study, people who are going to participate are most likely going to be people who are more interested in their brain health than somebody who, just a general everyday me, right? Because how would you find out about this study unless you were looking for like, ways to help my brain, right? And so, but we'll see. We'll see. We're in year 2. Maybe I'm too down on people. I'm like the Philippe when it comes to this type of thing. I don't have any hope that people are going to do the right thing or the thing that helps them the best.
Wow, this just took a turn.
Oh, negative all of a sudden. Damn.
That is negative. That's negative, man. I just thinking back at like some of the things that I've seen lately. I thought, it was really interesting. Did you guys see the Elon Musk? He finally, he took over Twitter. So then he walks into the office and he walks in with a sink. And the whole thing that he wanted people to think of was, hey, let this sink in, right? So, which was weird because that's all automatically, I thought, he went there with like a whole negative, we're about to fight when internally between me, my ideals and your ideals or whatever the ideals are. We're not that, hey, we're going to fix or we're going to have something bigger, better. It looks like it's going to start off in a contagious kind of way. Not contagious.
Contentious.
Adversarial, contentious. Yeah, contentious. Thank you. Type of way.
Actually, this is fun because somebody like Elon Musk, it's sort of like that's the poster child, right? For like Silicon Valley or technology or, there's so much. And I think that, yes, there's a brilliance there, much like there's a brilliance from Steve Jobs, much like there's a brilliance from other leaders that have come up. But at what cost?
Yeah.
Like at what personal cost to him and his relationships, who of course we know nothing really about, but to a company or to a society that is at the whim of, like his mood for that day. And, when you have someone in that much control with so much personal biases that we're seeing play out in a very negative way, right? Like in a very negative way. It's like, why do we hold, I was going to say folks, like but really it's guys. It's like, why do we hold guys up like that? It's like, I want to be like Elon Musk. And I look at that and I'm like, no, I don't. Man. I don't want to feel like I have to be that kind of person.
It's a control thing. Yeah.
I've never said I want to be like Elon Musk, but and I don't really use Twitter. But I was talking about Elon Musk yesterday because I saw a clip of he went on a podcast and looks like an executive from Twitter was there with him.
Now, see, I think that was a fake. That was fake.
Was it fake?
I looked. I'm big on looking up, like, is this a real video? But I know what you're talking about. But keep going. Tell the story though, because it's essentially what happened. So, but keep going.
So I guess this executive starts talking about how some of the things that they have failed at, and he goes, "Well, failure has consequences. You're fired."
Did you see that clip, Chris?
I did. Because I was looking at it too. It was basically, I think they were on Joe Rogan or something, and that executive who had made the executive decision several years ago to remove the former president from Twitter, right? Among other decisions, but
Did you know? So was it? Did you see it? Did you think? And now I'm not confirmed on it or not. Did you think that was a real clip or edited clip? I thought it was a clip that was put together because I went to try to find the actual episode that was done in, and I couldn't find it. But I know that she was on Joe Rogan separately, and then Elon was on Joe Rogan separately. So then they started splicing the video to make it seem as if that was what happened there on the show.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's real or not. But let's get into this though. Like the fact that we say that, right? Like, do you think that was real or not? Like, how hard is it that even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, that was not part of that conversation, right? No. Like we were having more of a, hey, I saw this happen. What do we think about it? But now we're in this, I saw this happen, but did it? Right? Like, and so I think we have, so we were talking about, challenging assumptions and challenging ideas. But when does that become conspiracy theories? When does it become harmful? When does it cross a line? And now we're off the deep end. This conversation's gone to a
no, you did. You took it way far down. So, it's funny that you say it. I'm going to add to that. How long will this kind of a thing kind of last? It'll last, I don't know, maybe another 20 years or so, but things are going to change. The world is going to significantly change, especially American society type of world. That's what I mean. When I say the world, I mean really our American culture. And it's really due to the way that we educate. I don't know the way that we educate how kids can be educated, what they're being educated on. And I saw, we're going to put this in the video. If you're watching or listening to this, you may want to check out the YouTube version because I'm going to put it in the show notes or in the show. But there used to be if you went to like the nationsreportcard.gov, right? They would tell you by the percentages how well our kids were kind of doing. right? They say, okay, they would say things like, well, 36% of kids can read proficiently at grade level. That's in grade 4, grade 8, and then 12th grade, which is not great by any means. Like 36% means that there are 64% of kids that can't read proficiently, right? Which I've always wished that they would have said, hey, this is how many kids can't, so that we're more alarmed by that information. But either way, but now, as of like early last month, rather than telling us the numbers, they just started putting up a new chart, and the new chart just has a bunch of down arrows in every single category. Like we're just down everywhere. It's like, just like we're just down. And they won't tell us the numbers, how much we're down or whatever. Now you could dig into it, but on the front page, when they used to show the numbers, they're just saying, hey, we're down. And so I'm hoping that we can get back to, telling us, telling the truth, man. Like if we can see it, then maybe we could change something. If I don't really know what the measurement is, I'm not trying to make any changes. And so I think that makes me nervous for, what it looks like later, not just from what we make, right? But about the people who are just looking for somebody else to lead them, because that guy has the idea. It makes me think about, I'm talking a lot, but it makes me think about Idiocracy. You guys, I don't know if anybody have seen that movie.
Oh,
where the guy, he was a knucklehead, and then he falls into the cryogenic chamber, and then he wakes up in the future, and they're sprinkling grass with Gatorade and trying to figure out why grass isn't growing. And he's like, what is this? He tastes what they're spraying on the grass. He's like, why is that not water? They're like, toilet water. Remember that? So it was a really funny clip to show, like, hey man, what happens when we have people that are following people, and not being able to think for themselves, so that we can solve some things even greater. You need brain power. All of the scientists of old were like a conglomerate of scientists. It wasn't just like, again, go back to Einstein. It wasn't just Einstein's idea. He worked with other scientists. Philippe's not a doctor by himself. He worked with other doctors.
I would say I find it really interesting that you equate being able to think for yourself with school systems doing better.
No, I don't. I don't. That's a good, but I know, yeah.
School basically trains everybody to be an employee. It steers.
Well, that may be true.
Thinking for yourself.
Yeah, so I agree with what you're saying there. I just think that we're not going to change the system. So whatever is currently being done right now, me saying that it doesn't work isn't going to change the fact that that's what we're using. So I'm going to say, okay, well, this is what we have. How are we going to make it work? And when I look at that, okay, what's going to make this work? I have to look at other factors. And I think that, we weren't evolved. We didn't, like you said, evolution. We didn't evolve, through actual evolution, or creation, or however you want to look at it. But we didn't evolve to read and write. Those are learned cognitive function skills, and you have to work them. And so if I look at a system that is misunderstanding how to improve that, or they don't work at it at all, and then I look at the technology that affects our cognitive function skills, where everybody's looking to exploit them for financial gain, then you could see people that aren't being developed, being constantly exploited, and then not being able to produce or have the outcomes from an educational system that it was not meant to fight. Right? The educational system was not made to improve cognitive function skills.
Sounds like it works the way it's supposed to me, but Chris looks like he has something he wants to say.
Well, no, it's interesting. We kind of like to sort of bring it back to, what I hear is agency or lack of agency, right?
Yeah, you're right.
You have control. What do we have control over, right? Like it may be a particular situation. It may be where we were born, what time, like all of these different things. What do we not have control over? And what do we have control over? And how can we manage what we have control over? Because I think all too often, particularly in the education or in the entrepreneurial space, or as whatever, it's that we are taught from a younger age than I would like to think, that we do not have agency over what we think, feel, and how we act. Whereas, like, I think that's one of the, and again, speaking personally, I know that that's one of the most powerful values that my folks like drilled into my head. And that you have agency, which means you have responsibility to use that agency in a positive way.
True.
Right. And so that's where that's you think about the messages that we receive, as well as the messages that we tell ourselves about what we quote unquote are and aren't allowed to do, the places where we should and shouldn't go, and the things that we are or aren't allowed to accomplish. Where I love the idea of it, like being not just an entrepreneur, but being an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurial thinker. It's that you're not just coming up with new ideas or challenging assumptions just because you want to tear stuff down. Like that's very uninspired and uninspiring to me. You're working on new ideas because those ideas are better, and because you're trying to be a net positive in the world, or even to a net positive to those around you. I think that's super exciting, and that happens with intention. Like you got to mean it, and you have to practice that. Which is, I mean, just like the guy that gets up and runs, or whatever. Like you don't run faster until you run faster.
And I agree with you what you're saying with that lack of agency and how you see that. I would agree with Philippe in the fact that in general the system doesn't inspire people to kind of be that entrepreneurial kind of thinker, right? They want you to turn over agency to them, but at the same time that is happening. I think that if you can improve cognitive function skills in people, mainly those kids that are going through that system, that they will be able to see past it, just like we were able to see past it, right? Because we came through the same system. So, and that's why I'm saying, hey, I'm trying to sound an alarm that, hey, as you see kids getting, not being able to accomplish more and more often, that means you're bringing also down the percentage of kids that will be able to see past it. Or that have the agency of their own volition. And so, that's interesting. I mean, and it's interesting that you brought that up, the lack of agency thing, because it comes to medication, especially when you look at medication for handling like ADD and ADHD, and like how people feel when they're on those things, that they kind of lose themselves they're different in those with those type of medications. But yeah, that's a big deal, big thing.
I think what I'm going to say is going to be a little controversial.
Say it.
Complicated.
All right, Kanye.
At some point,
or yay.
And obviously this is not going to hold true for every family. But at some point, we need to be responsible for what our children are learning and taking. Right. So I ask my kids all the time, what did you learn in school today? And they're always like, nothing. Right. The other day, my youngest son says to me, he's like, Papi, we learned more from you while we're driving in the car than we ever do at school. Because I talk to my kids about the power of their thoughts, the kind of messages that they need to be focused on versus what the world may be telling them. I talk to them about, look, your real education starts actually when you graduate from school. Commencement, another word for graduation, in French, commence, means the beginning. Your real education starts there, right? And so I'm constantly talking to them about things that I talk to adults about, that I talk to people I give talks about or whoever about. And so at some point, even though we know that, a lot of kids are not blessed with two-family households, father's not around, mother's not around, kids are born into really bad situations, and you would hope that there was a system that can sort of even the playing field for everyone. That's not the case. And so, for our kids, because like you said, you can't change the system for everybody, but you can change it for the kids in your own life.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I got to ask this. Are you teaching your kids about financial derivatives in the car?
Listen, I teach my kids about leadership skills. I teach them about financial literacy, right? So I teach my kids about a lot of things because I don't want my kids not having options. I don't want my kids thinking that their only way to be successful is college and some graduate school where they're saddled with loans and now they're sort of a slave to the system, right? I want more for them.
Well, I think in that same sense, like taking it from kids, I think that it comes back to that agency, that personal responsibility. Because I think about some of the best teachers that I had like Doc Nooncasser, he's hanging out somewhere out there. But in high school or wherever, right? Like wherever you encounter a great teacher, it's not that I remember 100% of what he taught me about American history. It's the feeling that he left me with about history. It's the feeling that he made me feel better. He made me feel smarter, and he made me feel that I was capable of learning all of that and applying it. And I think that's one of the magical things about, like, for teachers and for folks that I know that are in that profession, like they are working to give kids, right, like in the teaching profession, agency. They're saying, no, it's not enough for me to know how to do this. Like, right? Like, no, you can learn how to do this. And this is powerful. In the same way that in the professional world, I think we take mentorship for granted. We take setting that pipeline in order for granted, that it just happens, because it doesn't. Like, you have to work at it. You have to be intentional about seeking out people that are smarter than you, bringing that in, and then seeking out people that are one rung below you or one row back, and being able to say, hey, this is a thing that I don't just know, this is a thing that you can do applied to your own situation. And that's been one of the magical things, even in the past couple of years at the Entrepreneur Center, because you see it. Like, one of the big things about, building a business or big ideas or whatever, is that all it is theory until somebody tries it. All it is, but until somebody takes that spaghetti and throws it on the wall, you don't know if it sticks until that person puts the idea into the public or that strategy into action. It's all theory. So I love taking things. I love the idea of taking that agency, trying something, and then if it works, awesome, kudos, please teach somebody else how to do it. If it doesn't work, pivot, right? And learn how to take that sort of winding road. And then also learn how to take directions when necessary.
For sure. I want to see more of that. That's my hope. I want to see more people that are doing that same thing. Let's talk about your mentors, man. Through your early years, what were your mentors like through your early years? You have them? Did you use them? How did you take advantage of what they knew or didn't know?
I wish I had more. Right? Coming up as a young artist outside of college, like I had a great art professor when I was in school by the name of Bill Houston, and but again, I don't remember 100% of what he taught me about, like, this is how you paint or like all this kind of stuff. But what I remember most is at the top of his easel, he had an inscription that said, "Make it real compared to what?" Right? Now, he's a realist painter. I'm not. I'm a semi-abstract, kind of thing. But that is a whole philosophy. Make it real compared to what? And so he was able to sort of like just pound that into my brain. He also introduced me to Blue Note Records, and so that's what I listened to a lot from the Wayback Machine. But then I've had other mentors now where I get the good fortune of being around a lot of people that are smarter than me every day. So it's not that I have one mentor, it's that I have like 100 per day. And I try to take all of that in. Coming up, too, if you wanted my work ethic in one sentence, well, not a sentence, but one quick story, is I'm with my friends. We are maybe 17 years old. It's 5:30 in the morning, and we're working on a big construction job that my dad sold, agricultural fencing. It's just as sexy as it sounds. But we had shown up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to this job site, and there's an 18-wheeler full of fencing materials, 80,000 pounds full of fencing materials. And it's raining, and we're there, and we're like, well, I'm not going to get out in the rain, right? And my dad shows up a couple minutes later, and he gets out with a raincoat on, and I kind of sheepishly roll down the window, and he says, "What are you guys doing?" And I'm editing for PG audiences, but what are you guys doing? And I'm saying, "Dad, it's raining." And he's like, well, we got to get this stuff unloaded because this truck is going to leave, and we're basically just like, no, we're not getting out there. We're not going to work. I said, you have a raincoat on. And he looks at me like, this is 30, this is almost 30 years later. And I can still feel his eyes burn through the back of my head. And he takes his raincoat off, puts it in the truck, and jumps on the 18-wheeler. And so me and my buddies, we all look at each other like, all right, I guess we're getting wet.
Wow.
But, that has been a clarifying moment in my life. And then I've had other folks that, my wife, she's been my partner for 22 some odd years. And always, I see her as, we always joke about like ground control and Major Tom. You got to have both. And we sometimes switch that role for each other, which is just magical. But yeah, coming up, I wish I'd had more professional mentors, right? In my 20s, because from an artistic standpoint, I had more folks that were trying to stand in my way, which I had to learn to deal with,
Politics.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was really interesting. But yeah, I think, but at the same time, I've been lucky, and I continue to be lucky from that side of things, because I have 100 ideas a day. 97 of them are bad. So I need people around me that can say, hey, these 3, there you go. Let's go with these 3.
That's pretty funny. What about, so now, I guess in the current but the current kind of phase of life, do you have any mentors that you go to that help you kind of figure things out now with all the different things you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I have folks that, it's not like a direct mentor relationship, but folks that have made a big impact on me. Jim Biggs, the director over at the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, is quiet, unassuming, and correct most of the time. And so that's a guy that listens way more than he talks. And I love that. John Bruck is locally in Knoxville, Tennessee. He helps run an organization called the Spark Innovation Center. But during the depths of COVID, when I had just made a huge career change, I resigned from my position and took several months off. John Bruck is actually, I had a Zoom conversation with him in the depths of COVID. And he's the first person in my life that ever called me a founder. He said, he's very successful. He had founded a company. He has an investment portfolio, really cool guy. But he said, people like us, of course, there's the Seth Godin, right? People like us do things like this, but he's like, people like us, we're founders, right? And I had this is just a couple years ago. And that also is something that completely changed how I started to see myself. And now I get to be that person for so many people. That's
that's dope.
You're not, quote unquote, just a fill in the blank.
Right.
If you're willing to go take that risk, if you're willing to put yourself on the line, if you're willing to do that work, you are a founder. And that's powerful stuff. And I'm leaving people, just thinking about those guys, but I'm leaving people off of that list. Amazing folks in the community and all over the place.
No, that's dope. You made me, as bringing up Bruck, and you mentioned Seth Godin. Seth Godin's, isn't he here? I mean, Knoxville area? Yeah, right?
No. I don't know where he is.
No, there's not. You're right. There's a I forget his name right now. There's a really powerful, not powerful, but a well-known marketing guy that teaches does things.
Schaefer.
Yeah, Schaefer.
You're thinking about Mark.
Yeah, Mark Schaefer. You're right. He's good too.
He's awesome. He's actually going to be, in a month, will be a guest on the Big Ideas Welcome podcast.
Oh man. Hopefully he follows my episode of being on the Big Ideas Welcome episode.
Yes.
Shout out plug. So no, Philippe, if you haven't read one of his books, Mark Schaefer, he's a good one, man, on talking marketing
Yeah.
tactics and stuff like that. As we get out here and build things, getting bigger. So hey, Chris, man, this has been an awesome episode. This goes so much further. But I want to ask you this as we wrap up. Unless Philippe, you want to jump in, what not advice, but what one thing would you want people to notice or start noticing that they're currently not noticing that you think could help change certain directions that they may be headed on?
I would like people to notice the power that they have. Because I think all too often we limit ourselves. We put limits on the things that we think that we can do because we think people are thinking about us. But just like coming as the weird kid as in the cafeteria, and I'm thinking all the cool kids, all they're doing is thinking like, man, Chris's rat tail's not cool. No, they weren't. They were not thinking about that. So
only Susie.
Just the one. But I just, if there's one thing that I want, it's the absolute power and agency that we have. Even if that agency means doesn't mean we're going to run today, but you can take that one step, right? Like Philippe, I think you had talked about how folks come from different places. I have been personally blessed because of where I was born, when I was born, all of these things that we're not in control of, right? And so, but the idea that regardless of where you're coming from or where you're trying to get to, that even if it's one step at a time, that you can take that action. And what that action means may be completely different from the person sitting next to you, or the person sitting in front, or the person sitting behind you. And I think that's magical, because I think that there is a narrative that you've got to be that Elon Musk, that success looks like shiny shoes, that success looks like, that success looks like something that is unattainable. But in actuality, success can be one step at a time, right? One workout. You don't want to be, what's the way to think about it is that, let's say somebody does want to run faster. Well, at a certain point, you want to be the kind of person that wants to run faster, which is a very different thing, right? That sets up habits.
100%.
That sets up habits. That sets up a life. That sets up a lifestyle that says, this is something I value personally. And so I'm going to take the time, effort, and attention to make sure that I act on it. Right. So that's, if I had one thing, I would say we all have the power to act in even a small way to positively affect our lives and the lives of others.
That's beautiful said, man.
Yeah, I 1000% agree with that. I think so often you see people who are not acting because they don't believe that they can.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And like you said, we have this idea of what success looks like, right? We talked a little bit about Elon Musk, but maybe Elon Musk, yeah, he may have a lot of money, but maybe he's not socially successful, right? Maybe you don't want a whole bunch of kids with different women. Maybe you don't consider that successful. People always talk about Albert Einstein and how brilliant he was, and I'm always like, yeah, but Albert Einstein was sleeping with his cousin, so right. So success can look like very different things for very different people, and people need to define success for themselves and not measure it against somebody else, because nobody is going to do you, Chris, better than you can do you, Chris. Right? Same way nobody's going to do Doug better than Doug can do Doug, or me better than I can do me.
Well said. And that was his sixth cousin, by the way. So, that doesn't count.
I
think once you have to, once you have to get further reading into cousins, I think you've already crossed it. It's already too late.
I think it was really first or second cousin. Everybody's separated by 6 or 7 degrees. Chris is
oh goodness.
Oh man. All right. Well, hey, Chris, thanks for coming on the Brain Profits. This has been a wonderful conversation, man. And people, you know what to do. Or Chris, tell the people where they can find you again on the social streets.
Yeah. If y'all want to follow me, just if you search for Chris McAdoo, just MCADOO on Instagram or on Connect With Me on LinkedIn. But I would love it if everybody gave a listen to Big Ideas Welcome and follow the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center on all the socials. We've got so many people working so hard. I mean, I'll shout out to Jalen Baker and Catherine Forth and Holly and Courtney and Jim and Delaney and all the crew that Candace and all the crew that works hard to put together a lot. We share a lot about our community, right? Like, so you get to meet a lot of entrepreneurs if you follow us. And that's just, Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, search Chris McAdoo. Those are the things.
All right. All right. Well, until next time, we're Brain Profits.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, this has been fun.